your mat. My name's Mel and I'm taking you through a hip mobility class. You don't need any equipment today, just lay out your mat or find some space on the floor. We're going to get started lying onto our back. I will meet you there. You want to have your knees bent and your feet are about hip distance apart, and just take your hands out a little bit wider than your mat, palms facing down. And you want to make sure the back of your head, your neck and your shoulders are nice and relaxed. We're going to try to keep our shoulder blades on the mat. We're going to take our knees over to one side. Take them back through the center and slowly make your way over to the other side of your mat. You want your knees to be nice and heavy through this movement. We're just going to slowly transition from side to side. So just working at your own pace here. Allow that lower back and the hips to move with the knees. We're just going to keep our shoulder blades on the mat. Feeling that twist through the lower back. You might want to take your feet a little bit wider. Allowing both knees to drop. Trying to get them as close to the floor as you can. You can hold on one side for a little bit longer. Noticing if you're feeling any restriction anywhere or any tightness. As you exhale, try to soften a little bit more into the shape. If you're holding, let's go over to the other side. Feeling if there's any difference between the two sides. Where are you feeling that pull or that restriction? And let's try work into those areas during this class. We'll meet back in the center, bringing those feet hip width apart and bring your hands a little bit closer, so inside your mat. We're going to slowly tuck our tailbone under and we're going to lift our hips up off the mat, nice and slowly, holding at the top. You might want to take your feet a little bit wider. Our glutes are pushing up and our knees are slightly pressing out towards the side of our mat. Let's slowly roll those hips down. We're just going to move through this a couple of times. Tuck the tailbone, lift the hips, press through the feet. Shoulder blades are nice and firm on the mat. Slowly roll back down. Tuck the tailbone to lift. Press those knees out to the side. Really feel our glutes engaged. Slowly roll back down. Relaxing at the bottom, resetting, press up nice and firm. Little pause at the top. We want to feel that engagement. We want to feel the length through the front of our hips. Arches of the feet stay lifted, knees pressing out. Hold that tension as you slowly roll back down. Relaxing at the bottom. We've got two more just at your own pace. Making sure you pause at the top, control on the way down. Meeting with our tailbone back onto our mat, let's go into a glute stretch. So you're going to cross one ankle over the opposite knee and just push that knee away from you. This might be enough of a stretch for you today and that's completely fine. You might want to walk that heel or that foot that's on the mat a little bit closer. Or we can lift that whole leg up off the mat, grabbing behind the back of the leg and holding that stretch there. The more you bring your knee in towards your chest, the more of a stretch you might feel. Make sure we keep that knee pressing away as well. So we're holding here for a couple of seconds. You can find a little rock from side to side if that feels nice. You can drop the leg at any point or pick the leg up at any point if you feel like that stretch starts to ease off. Just find some nice deep breaths. Throughout this class, if you feel like you need to hold a stretch for a little bit longer than we are moving forward, feel free to hold that stretch. You can pause the video if you feel like you need to, and just meet us wherever you pick up from. Let's place that foot back down. We're going to switch sides. Press that knee out first. Feel comfortable in that position with the foot on the floor. And then if you'd like that additional stretch, we will lift that leg up off the mat. Still trying to keep our head, neck and shoulders nice and relaxed. Find that rock from side to side. Help relax through the hips. Finding those deep breaths again. Dropping the leg if you want to decrease the stretch, or picking that leg up to increase. Holding for a little bit longer if you feel you need it, otherwise we're going to move on. So let's come up to a seated position now, just with our hands behind us and our feet are still out in front of us. We're going to take our feet probably about as wide as your mat. To ease off the stretch, you're going to lean back further into those hands, and to increase the stretch, you're going to walk those hands right behind you. We're going to drop our knees over to one side like we were doing at the start, just in a seated position now. We're aiming to get our knees as close to the ground as possible, especially the knee that's dropping down onto the mat. The one that's falling off the edge of the mat, that one you want to try push down towards the floor as well, but probably at a little less movement than the one that's dropping onto the mat. Just working our hips through that internal and external rotation. Just want to transition from side to side nice and slowly. Again, holding on one side if you feel like you need to hold that stretch, and moving whenever you feel ready. Noticing the difference between each side. Noticing if you're feeling the restriction maybe on the outside of the thigh or the inside of the thigh. You can stay in this movement if you like and if you feel this is most appropriate for you. Otherwise, we can progress this movement a little bit. So if you're feeling nice and warm, you're feeling really limber, we can try to do it without our hands. So we're sitting up nice and tall off our tailbone, and we want to drop those knees over to one side, pick the knees back up, and drop over to the other side. You're pivoting a little bit on your sit bones. You may be able to get both knees to touch the ground in this movement, which is fantastic. It can be a reference point to work towards. If it's too painful in your hips, if you're getting too much clicking and cracking that's causing you pain, I would suggest going back onto your hands, back to that first progression before moving on to this second progression. If you feel like the hip noises or the hip clicks are not causing you any pain or discomfort, and they're actually becoming less and less as you start to move and open up through the hips, then you should be able to feel safe to keep going through this movement. Play around with it, see if you can twist over your knees. That might look quite nice for you. Hopefully each time gets a little bit easier and easier. We can progress this movement one more time, and as we drop our knees over to the side, this is when we can come up into a kneeling position. So I'm going to push my hips forward and come up into a kneel. Lower my hips back down, and we can go over to the other side. Drop those knees and lift up into that kneel. Drop the hips back down, switching sides, and coming up into that kneeling position. That's been the third progression. If that doesn't feel good for you today, just stick with progression 1 or progression 2. Try to keep the movement nice and controlled as best you can. You might find that you can do progression 2, so with your hands back behind you to switch, but then you may want to try come up into that kneeling position. You can use your hands to help you if you like. Come up into the little kneel, help yourself lower back down, recline to switch, and then see if you can press up into that kneel. There's no cheating in mobility. We're just going to do a couple more on each side, working at your own pace. If you feel like you want to work through this a little bit more, feel free. You can pause the video, otherwise we'll be moving on. Last one. Press those hips back down. Hopefully feeling a little bit warmer now. We're going to go into an adductor stretch. So I started in a 4-point kneeling position. I'm going to take my leg out to the side, and then from here I'm just going to shift my hips back, aiming to get a nice stretch down the inside of the leg that's out straight. You can just hold this stretch here if you feel comfortable, otherwise you can move through it, so you can bring your hips back up almost to that 4-point kneeling position or 3-point kneeling position, and sink your hips back whenever you feel ready. Making it more dynamic by moving from an up position to a down position, or keeping it a little bit more static by just holding that position down. It should just be a gentle pull on the inner thigh. We don't want anything too intense. If it is quite intense when you've got your hips down, you might find that your hips up is a much more pleasant experience for you. You can just take that leg out a little bit longer. That might be enough of a stretch for you. These mobility classes are really great just to connect with your body, because no one feels stretched in the exact same position or to the same intensity. So it's a really good way of just checking in with yourself, seeing how everything's feeling, and knowing, I suppose, your limits and what your body needs, and just making those small changes. So a small little change like extending your leg out or moving it backwards or lifting the toes up can really change the stretch. Something that might feel better for you or worse for you, and it's just about exploring in a really safe space. Not pushing ourselves in mobility. We're just going to slowly work into the body. Whenever you're ready, you're going to tuck that leg under, and we're going to change sides. Take your other leg out nice and long. Again, holding or shifting those hips back. Really common for each side to feel a little bit different. We just want to make sure that when we are in a stretch that we're not fighting it. So you shouldn't feel like your muscles are tensing to be in that position. You just need to back off a little bit, let the muscles relax, and that's when we're going to find the most benefit and get the best stretch. Finding those deeper breaths. So we're going to move on to the next exercise, which is a really deep squat. So what you're going to do is you are going to find the mat with your feet. We want to take our feet out as wide as we can, that our heels are going to be resting onto the ground. So from here, I just like to rock from side to side. So I've got my whole foot flat onto the ground. And as I rock from side to side, the heel will lift on the other foot. So one foot is flat, one foot is rocking. And that's just going to warm up my ankles. So sometimes it might not be the hips that don't allow you to get into this deep squat, but it can be the ankle mobility. You do need quite a bend in the ankle to hold that deep squat. So let's just warm up through the feet, through the ankles first. Having your hands out in front for good balance. You may want to stay in this rocking position. You may not be able to stay in this position for very long. Again, everyone is really different, so just work with what works best for you. You can hold on to the ankles if you feel like you have your balance, and you can lift the hips up and lower the hips back down. I do like to keep my arms or my elbows on the inside of my knees, so it's like I'm forcing my knees out nice and wide. So you're forcing yourself into that deep squat position. You can have your hands out in front of you for a bit of balance. You don't have to get your knees out nice and straight. You may have a nice decent bend in the knees. Again, we can rock from side to side. Keep going into that bend and extend position. If you feel comfortable just to hold the squat, then that is amazing. I like to push my knees out with my elbows. I'm sinking my hips down, lifting the chest, and holding that deep squat position. Again, if you feel like you can't be here for very long, just stand up out of the stretch, shake the legs off, go back to one of the other two variations that we just did. If this is feeling okay for you and you feel like you can hold a little bit longer, we can add a little rotation. So you drop one hand down onto the mat and the other hand reaches up towards the ceiling. And we swap. I tuck that elbow in, I place that hand down, and I open that other arm up towards the ceiling. You might just want to do a couple each side. Maybe the one each side was enough for you and then tapping out. You can always find a child's pose if you need to rest. I'm just going to do one more rotation each side. And then we can slowly come out of that squat. So you can stand or you can find a child's pose. Whatever feels best for you, just to shake out that position that we were just in. Beautiful. Let's come down onto our belly. We're going to find a scorpion stretch. So we're going to have our hands just resting underneath our chin. I'm going to get you to bend one knee so that thigh is resting on the mat, but that foot's up in the air. And then we're going to slowly draw that foot over to the other side of the mat, resting your head down. For some of you, your foot may be able to touch the ground behind you. For others, like me, it's just hanging in the air. And we're slowly just trying to open up the front of our hip, the front of our thigh. You can hold that stretch like we have been for the others, or we can swap from side to side. Bending that knee, taking that foot over to the other side of the mat. Feeling that twist through the spine as well, especially through the lower back. You want to keep your shoulders nice and relaxed. Ideally your forearms on the ground. Slowly transition from side to side. Finding those deep breaths, especially when it's uncomfortable. Beautiful job. Let's kick it back into a child's pose. So having our knees out nice and wide so we can really open up through the hips. Sink the hips down and walk those hands forward, resting your head down onto your mat if you can. You can find a little rock from side to side if that feels comfortable and you want to work into the hips just a tiny little bit. Then settle back through the center. We're going to make our way into our 4-point kneeling position. We are going to take our leg out to the side and resting it back underneath the hip. Take it out to the side, rest it back under the hip. So the knee is staying bent at a 90-degree angle. I'm pushing the mat away with my hands. I'm keeping my chin tucked in. You want to lengthen the crown of the head towards the top of your mat. And just open that hip just enough that when you open, you feel that tension, you feel that glute engage, and then you rest it back down onto the mat. We want to keep the other hip nice and still, so we don't want to be like twisting our body to open that knee out to the side. Hip bones face forward or down towards the mat. The rest of the body is staying nice and still. A couple more out to the side, and then we're going to be kicking our leg back. 2 more. Lift and lower. Last one, lift and lower. Same side, push the sole of your foot up towards the ceiling, rest it back down underneath the hip. Press up towards the ceiling and slowly lower. Again, the rest of the body staying nice and still. I want you to keep that spine nice and straight. Shoulders haven't moved, they're on top of our wrist. Our chin is staying tucked in. And that supporting leg is nice and still. 2 more here. Kick that leg up. Slowly lower. Kick that leg up. And slowly lower. Beautiful. Let's draw some circles now with that hip. So we take it out to the side, rotate it round behind you, and then lower it back underneath the hip. Take it out to the side, rotate that knee out and around, bringing it back home. So it's like I'm drawing a circle with my kneecap. Take it out, around, back, and back down. 2 more circles. Keep breathing through the last circle. Resting that leg down. Beautiful, we've got the other side to go. Let's start out with the side kick first. Take it out to the side and lowering it back underneath the hip. Good. If you needed a break between the sides, that's completely fine. Shake out the wrists, shake out the hips. We won't be here for too much longer on this side. Let's kick it out for 4, 3, 2, lucky last one. And we kick that leg behind us, sole of the foot up towards the ceiling. Slowly lower. Strong press, slowly lower. Press, and return. Good, 4 more. Good, exhale, press. Inhale, lower, last one, press and lower. And let's draw those circles. Take that knee out to the side. Circle it around and back down. Big circle with that kneecap. Take it out to the side, circle round and down. Nicely done. Out, round and down. 3 more here. We've got this. Out, round and down. For 2. Last big circle. Press it out, wrap it around, bring it back down. We've got our donkey kicks with a crossover. So what I'm going to get you to do is lift that leg up towards the ceiling, knees bent to 90 degrees. So you're pushing the sole of your foot up towards the ceiling. And then I want you to bring it down on the outside of your resting knee. Press it back up towards the ceiling and then pull it across the body. Aim to get it on the outside of that resting leg. Just like you're kind of tucking that knee behind the other knee, like you're in a cross-legged position on a chair. Press it up, cross it over, press it up, slowly draw it down towards the mat. Good, press it up, slowly stretch. 3 more, press, cross, press, lengthen, last one, press, and lengthen. Beautiful. Let's do the other side. Rest that knee down. Let's press the sole of the foot up towards the ceiling. Cross it over as we lower. Press and cross. Press and cross. Good. 3 more. We're going to press, lower, press, lower, last one, press and lengthen. Good job. Find a child's pose if you like, sink those hips back, rest those arms forward, forehead finds the mat. Some nice deep breaths, relaxing through those hips. Thank you so much for joining me for that class. I really hope you warmed up through the hips. I hope they're feeling a little bit limber, and it's totally normal if you feel like you have done a workout even though you just felt like you've done mobility and stretching. The muscles have been active, and so if you're a little bit sore through the hips tomorrow, that is completely normal. Make sure you drink lots of water. Heat if you feel like you are feeling a little bit sore, tired and fatigued in the muscles. Helps them relax. And I really look forward to seeing you on your mat for your next class.